The evening lights of downtown Seattle glittered like stars fallen to earth, reflecting off the rain-slicked streets of the Magnolia district. Emely Mitchell stood at her apartment window, a cup of green tea warming her hands as she watched the city prepare for another night. At 42, she carried herself with the measured grace of someone who had seen the darkest corners of the world, though few in her peaceful neighborhood knew about that chapter of her life. Before we dive deeper into this story, if it resonates with you, make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow we have something extraordinary coming your way. Now let's return to our tale. The modest two-bedroom apartment wasn't what most people expected from someone who ran one of Seattle's most successful martial arts academies. But Emely had never cared much for outward appearances. The walls held photos of her teenage daughter Lily growing into the beautiful, headstrong 16-year-old she was today, alongside a single photograph tucked away in the corner. Emely in desert camo, standing with her SEAL team in an undisclosed location, their faces obscured by tactical gear. The transition from Lieutenant Commander Emely "Shadow" Mitchell to civilian life hadn't been easy, but watching Lily grow up in peace had made it worthwhile. After losing her husband David to a car accident 4 years ago, Emely had thrown herself into building a life that would make him proud. The Martial Arts Academy had started as a way to stay connected to her training while helping others, but it had grown into something more. A sanctuary where she could teach others to protect themselves while keeping her own lethal skills carefully hidden. A text message lit up her phone, Lily, announcing she was heading home from volleyball practice. Emely smiled at the cascade of emojis that followed, so different from the terse military communications that had once ruled her life. The city outside her window was changing as day shifted to night, the respectable business crowd giving way to a different element. Emely had noticed the subtle shifts in the neighborhood lately, new faces lurking in shadows, whispered conversations that stopped when people walked by, the increasing tension in the air that reminded her of missions where things were about to go wrong. The local news had been reporting on a series of disappearances, teenage girls vanishing without a trace. The police seemed baffled, but Emely's instincts, honed through years of counter-terrorism operations, told her these weren't random incidents. She'd seen the black SUVs cruising the streets, noted the men who watched the high school with too much interest, recognized the tactical awareness in their movements that spoke of professional training. Her academy students had started sharing stories. Parents worried about their daughters, rumors of a new gang moving into the area, whispers about human trafficking operations that the authorities couldn't crack. Emely had listened, gathering intelligence just as she had during her SEAL days, while maintaining her cover as just another concerned small business owner. The security system she'd installed throughout the apartment complex, far more sophisticated than her neighbors realized, showed Lily's usual route home from practice. Their building's garage, the elevator, the hallway to their door, all monitored with military-grade equipment that would have seemed paranoid to anyone who didn't know her background. But Emely had learned long ago that peace was maintained through vigilance, and she'd lost too much already to take chances with her daughter's safety. Her phone buzzed again. Lily was stopping at Maya's Cafe, their favorite dinner spot just 2 blocks away. Emely's response was immediate. "Be safe. Text when you leave." The words were casual, but they were part of the security protocols she'd drilled into her daughter since she was old enough to walk home alone. Regular check-ins, predetermined, routes, code words for danger. Lily thought it was just her mom being overprotective, never knowing these were the same communication procedures Emely had once used with SEAL teams in hostile territory. Through the window, Emely watched 3 black SUVs roll past her building, moving with the kind of precision that set off every warning bell in her tactical mind. They weren't local vehicles, their movements too coordinated, their timing too precise. Her hand instinctively moved to her hip, where she'd once carried something far more lethal than the civilian self-defense instructor's certification that now hung in her academy. The sun had fully set now, the city's shadows deepening as Emely's phone remained silent. 5 minutes passed beyond Lily's usual check-in time. Then 10. The tactical watch on Emily's wrist, a remnant of her service days that she'd never given up, seemed to tick with increasing urgency. Another text to Lily went unanswered, then a call that went straight to voicemail. Emily's movements were calm and deliberate as she pulled up the tracking app on her phone, another security measure. Lily had reluctantly accepted. The signal showed her daughter's phone still at Maya's cafe, but it hadn't moved in 15 minutes. Too long for a simple dinner stop. Something was wrong. Emely could feel it in her bones, the same instinct that had kept her alive through countless operations, now screaming that her worst fears were becoming reality. The living room wall held a hidden panel, its contents unknown even to Lily. Emily's fingers found the concealed latch, revealing the cache of equipment she'd prayed she'd never need to use again. Tactical gear, communications equipment, and tools that no civilian martial arts instructor should possess. As she efficiently geared up, muscle memory from years of operations taking over, Emily's mind was already racing through scenarios, analyzing possibilities, preparing for what she knew would be the most important mission of her life. The peaceful Seattle evening was about to discover that it had made a fatal mistake. They hadn't taken just any teenager. They'd taken the daughter of a woman who had spent 15 years as one of the most lethal operators in naval special warfare history. And like the countless enemies who had underestimated her before, they were about to learn why her SEAL team had called her Shadow. By the time they saw her coming, it would already be too late. Emily's tactical boots made no sound as she descended the apartment building's back stairs, her movements smooth and practiced. The gear she wore beneath her black civilian jacket wasn't military issue. It was better, accumulated over years of private contracts after her official service ended. Her phone showed Lily's signal still stationary at Maya's cafe, but Emily's instincts told her she needed to move fast. The evening streets of Magnolia looked different through her tactical mindset. Every shadow held potential threats. Every passing car demanded analysis. The black SUVs she'd spotted earlier were gone, but their tire tracks remained in the wet pavement, telling a story her trained eyes could read. They'd circled the block multiple times before stopping. Coordinated surveillance, professional. Planning Maya's cafe came into view, its warm light spilling onto the rain-slicked sidewalk. Through the windows, Emely could see the usual evening crowd, but no sign of Lily. The tactical radio concealed in her ear, tuned to police frequencies, crackled with routine chatter, nothing about missing teenagers or suspicious vehicles. The cafe's door chimed as Emely entered, her stance casual, but her eyes rapidly scanning the space. Maya herself was behind the counter, her usual warm smile fading as she saw Emily's expression. "Emely, is everything okay?" Maya asked, her voice carrying concern. "Lily texted that she was stopping here," Emely replied, her voice controlled. "Have you seen her?" Maya's face clouded. "She was here about 20 minutes ago, ordered her usual smoothie, but then she got a text and went outside to take a call. I thought she left after that." Emily's hand tightened on her phone. "Did you notice anyone watching her? Any unusual customers?" "Now that you mention it." Maya lowered her voice, leaning closer. "There were these men in suits, not our usual crowd. They'd been here about an hour, barely touched their coffee. They left right after Lily went outside." Emily's tactical mind was already assembling the pieces. "Security cameras?" Maya nodded toward the corner-mounted cameras. "They record to our cloud storage, but—" She paused, noting the shift in Emily's bearing. "Emely, you're scaring me. What's going on?" "I need that footage, Maya. Now." Something in Emily's tone, the unmistakable command presence she'd developed. Leading SEAL teams made Maya hurry to comply. Within minutes, Emely was watching the footage on Maya's office computer. Her trained eye caught what civilians would miss: the way the men in suits positioned themselves, their practiced surveillance techniques, the subtle hand signals they exchanged. The exterior camera showed Lily stepping outside. Phone to her. Ear. A black SUV pulled up smoothly, its tinted windows hiding its occupants. Two men emerged, their movements efficient and coordinated. Emily's jaw tightened as she watched them approach Lily, not threatening, not obvious, but with the kind of practiced casualness that spoke of professional abductors. The camera caught Lily's expression changing from confusion to fear, but by then it was too late. The men flanked her, one showing something in his hand, probably a weapon, while the other moved to block the view from the cafe windows. The whole sequence took less than 30 seconds. Professional, practiced, the kind of operation Emely herself had once trained people to execute. "Oh my God," Maya whispered, watching the footage. "Should I call the police?" Emely was already moving toward the door, her mind shifting fully into operational mode. "They're professionals, Maya. By the time the police mobilize, Lily will be long gone." She paused, turning back. "But I need you to do something else for me. Something important." Maya nodded, her face pale but determined. "In exactly 1 hour, call this number." Emely handed her a card with a single phone number written on it. "Tell them Shadow requires assistance, Protocol 7. They'll know what it means." Outside, Emely knelt by the spot where the SUV had stopped, her fingers finding what she'd hoped for: small drops of fluid on the pavement, power steering fluid leaking from a damaged line. It wasn't much, but for someone with her training, it was a trail. Her phone vibrated, a text from an unknown number. A video opened showing Lily, terrified but unharmed, held in what looked like a warehouse space. A digitally altered voice spoke. "Mrs. Mitchell, by now you've realized we have your daughter. You run a successful business. You have access to funds. $5 million in cryptocurrency within 24 hours, or your daughter disappears forever. We'll contact you with delivery instructions." No police. Emily's expression remained neutral as she watched the video, but inside, a switch had flipped. The kidnappers had made a series of fatal mistakes. First, they'd taken her daughter. Second, they'd assumed she was just a civilian businessman. And third, they'd given her a video that contained far more intelligence than they realized. Her trained eye caught the details they'd failed to obscure. The distinctive pattern of support columns in the warehouse, the partial reflection of a street sign in a window, the faint sound of specific industrial equipment in the background, all elements that, to someone with her background, began to paint a picture of location. The tactical radio in her ear crackled again, this time with a report of suspicious activity near the industrial district by the port. Multiple high-end vehicles moving in convoy formation. Emily's lips curved in a grim smile. They thought they were hunting a wealthy widow. Instead, they'd awakened something far more dangerous, a mother who had spent years hunting terrorists in the world's deadliest environments. They had 24 hours to deliver their demands. Emely needed far less time than that to remind them why she'd earned the call sign Shadow during her SEAL team days. And this time, she wasn't operating under military rules of engagement. Emely moved through the rainy Seattle streets like a ghost, her steps silent despite her tactical gear. The industrial district loomed ahead, a maze of warehouses and shipping containers that most people would find overwhelming. But to her trained eye, it was familiar territory, not unlike the urban warfare environments she'd operated in during her service years. The black SUVs had left a trail that only someone with her training would recognize. Subtle signs in traffic, patterns, security camera blind spots deliberately exploited, the kind of route selection that spoke of professional planning. She'd accessed the city's traffic camera network through methods left over from her intelligence-gathering days, tracking the vehicle's movement toward the port area. Her tactical radio picked up scattered communications, private security channels, using encrypted frequencies they thought were secure. Emely's equipment, far more sophisticated than standard civilian gear, decoded enough to confirm her suspicions. These weren't ordinary criminals. Their radio discipline and communication protocols suggested private military training. A series of messages lit up her phone, responses to the alert Maya would have sent out by now. Former teammates scattered across the country, but still connected through networks unknown to the civilian world, offering support and intelligence. One message caught her attention. Target identified. Nexus Corp, private military contractors, known for trafficking operations in Eastern Europe. Emely's jaw tightened. She'd encountered Nexus Corp during her final years of service, a private military company that had strayed far from legitimate operations, using their tactical training for corporate espionage and organized crime. They were professionals, dangerous, but they'd made a crucial mistake in their planning. They had prepared to deal with civilian resistance or law enforcement response. They weren't prepared for someone like her. Through her tactical monocular, Emely observed the warehouse complex they'd chosen as their base. 3 buildings matched the architectural details from the ransom video, but one stood out, Building 37. The security pattern around it was distinct. Roving guards with military bearing, surveillance equipment carefully hidden in maintenance, fixtures, communication antennas disguised as standard industrial equipment. Her phone vibrated with another message from her network. Thermal imaging from private satellite shows 14 heat signatures in Building 37, multiple armed. One smaller figure isolated in northwest corner. Emely's heart tightened. Lily, the message continued. Local assets standing by. How do you want to play this, Shadow? The rain intensified as Emely contemplated her approach. Direct assault. Would be suicide, even with her skills, but she hadn't earned her reputation by taking the obvious route. The kidnappers would be expecting either a desperate mother attempting amateur heroics or a police response. They wouldn't be expecting the kind of infiltration tactics that had made her legendary in special operations. A maintenance van pulled up to the warehouse's side entrance, shift change for the cleaning crew. Emely watched through her monocular as the guards performed a cursory check, their movements showing the kind of complacency that often developed in professional units. When they thought they were dealing with a routine operation, her tactical wheel silently calculated angles, blind spots, patrol patterns. The guards were good, but they were watching for external threats. They hadn't secured their maintenance access points with the same vigilance, a crucial oversight that reminded Emely of an operation in Kandahar where her team had infiltrated a supposedly impenetrable compound through the ventilation system. The cleaning crew, 2 tired-looking workers, began unloading their equipment. Emely's trained eye caught what the guards missed. The slight nervousness in their movements, the way they kept glancing at the security cameras. Not regular employees. The pieces clicked into place. These were likely part of the trafficking operation used to move packages in and out under the guise of maintenance work. A plan formed in Emely's mind, drawing on years of covert operations experience. The guards were expecting a ransom negotiation, giving them 24 hours of supposed security. They weren't expecting immediate action, and they certainly weren't expecting the kind of infiltration she'd perfected during her SEAL team days. Her phone lit up with another message, this one from an old teammate now working in federal law enforcement. Local authorities contained. No response to warehouse district for next 2 hours. You have a window, Shadow. Make it count. Emely's fingers moved swiftly over her phone, coordinating with her network. She needed a diversion, something to draw attention without suggesting a rescue attempt. Within minutes, confirmation came back. A mechanical failure at a nearby power substation would create a brownout in 30 minutes, forcing the warehouse to switch to backup power. As she waited for darkness to deepen, Emely methodically checked her equipment. The weapons she carried weren't military issue. They were specialized tools chosen for close-quarter stealth operations. Her old SEAL teammates had often joked that she was deadlier, with less equipment than most operators were, with full tactical loadouts. The rain continued to fall, providing additional cover as Emely began moving closer to the warehouse complex. Her movements were measured, deliberate, using the urban terrain in ways her targets wouldn't expect. Even if they spotted her on their security cameras, she would appear as nothing more than a shadow in the rain. A reputation she'd earned through countless successful infiltrations. A final message flashed on her phone. Satellite confirms target still in northwest section. 14 Tangos maintains positions. Timer set for power disruption. Emely allowed herself a grim smile as she silently approached her entry point. The kidnappers had chosen this location carefully, believing its security made them untouchable. They were about to learn what her enemies in the field had discovered too late. Nowhere was untouchable for someone who had spent their career becoming a ghost. The warehouse loomed before her, its security measures now fully mapped in her tactical mind. In 30 minutes, the power would flicker, backup generators would engage, and in that moment of transition, a shadow would enter their fortress. They had threatened her daughter, believing they were dealing with a simple civilian. Instead, they had awakened something far more dangerous. A mother who had spent years hunting the world's deadliest prey, and like all those who had underestimated her before, they would learn too late why she had earned the name Shadow. The warehouse's service entrance opened with a hydraulic hiss as the cleaning crew finished their security check. Emely watched from her concealed position as they wheeled their equipment inside, the guards performing one last sweep of the perimeter before returning to their posts. Through her tactical monocular, she counted the seconds between security camera sweeps, professional setup, but every system had its gaps. The rain masked the sound of her movement as she ghosted from shadow to shadow, closing the distance to the maintenance access point she'd identified. Her watch counted down the minutes until the power disruption. Timing would be crucial. The kidnappers had chosen their location well, but Emely had breached better secured facilities during her service years. Her earpiece crackled with encrypted chatter from the security team. Perimeter check complete. All sectors secure. Emily's lips curved in a cold smile. They were good, but they were following predictable patterns. The same confidence that made them efficient would create opportunities for someone who knew how to exploit routine. 20 minutes until the power disruption. Emely reached the maintenance access panel, her fingers working with practiced efficiency. The security system was sophisticated. Magnetic contacts, fiber optic runs, multiple redundancies. But she hadn't spent 15 years in special operations without learning how to bypass even the most advanced security measures. A guard passed nearby, his boots splashing through puddles. Emely remained perfectly still, her dark clothing blending with the shadows. The guard's flashlight beam swept past her position, but his eyes slid right over her. Humans were naturally drawn to movement, and she had mastered the art of becoming part of the environment. "How's our package?" The guard's radio crackled with a response that made Emily's blood run cold. "Sedated but stable. Boss wants her ready for transport at 0400. Her fingers tightened on her equipment. They were planning to move Lily sooner than their ransom deadline suggested. Another sign that this was a professional operation with contingency plans. The security panel yielded to her expertise, circuits carefully bypassed to avoid triggering alarms. Emily's movements were methodical, each step calculated to maintain her ghost-like presence. The maintenance shaft beyond the panel was tight. Most adults wouldn't be able to navigate it effectively. But Emely's SEAL training had included confined space operations, and her body remembered 15 minutes to power disruption. She eased into the shaft, her specialized gear allowing silent movement through the narrow space. The warehouse's ventilation system spread out above her like a three-dimensional maze, but she'd memorized the layout from architectural plans her network had acquired. Northwest corner. That's where they were holding Lily. Radio chatter continued in her earpiece as she navigated the building's infrastructure. The guards were disciplined, professional, but their communications revealed details they didn't realize. Patrol patterns, response protocols, contingency plans. Each piece of information filed away in Emily's tactical mind, building a more complete picture of the operation. Grid 7 showing power fluctuations, a voice reported. Maintenance. Says it's affecting the whole district. Right on schedule. Emily's watch counted down the final minutes as she positioned herself above a maintenance junction near her target area. Through gaps in the ventilation system, she could see portions of the warehouse interior. Guards patrolling with military precision, monitoring stations with multiple displays, reinforced doors securing different sections. The lights flickered once, twice, then plunged the warehouse into darkness. Emergency lights kicked in as backup generators spun up, creating exactly the distraction she needed. In the momentary confusion, Emely moved. The ventilation grate released silently, allowing her to drop into a maintenance corridor outside the secure area. 2 guards rushed past, responding to automated system alerts. Emely pressed against the wall, becoming one with the shadows. Their flashlight beams never found her. She'd chosen her position carefully, understanding how human eyes adapted to sudden lighting changes. All sections, report status, a voice commanded over the radio. Emely listened as each security team responded, noting how they adjusted their patrol patterns to compensate for perceived vulnerabilities during the power transition. They were well-trained, but they were following standard security protocols. Her SEAL team had specialized in exploiting exactly those kinds of standardized responses. Through the reinforced door ahead, Emely caught a glimpse of her target area. 2 guards outside what had to be Lily's room, another monitoring station, with direct sight lines to the approaches, standard defensive position, but they were watching for frontal threats. They weren't prepared for what was about to emerge from the shadows. Her network's intelligence was solid. 14 hostiles in the building, divided between security teams and support personnel. The guards' movement suggested standard private, military contractor training, probably ex-military but not special operations. They were dangerous, but they lacked the specialized infiltration experience that had made her legendary in the SEAL teams. Emily's hands moved to her specialized equipment, non-lethal takedown tools chosen specifically for this operation. As a SEAL, she had been authorized to use lethal force. As a mother trying to rescue her daughter, she needed to be more surgical. Dead bodies would attract immediate attention. Unconscious guards could buy her precious minutes. The backup generators hummed as the warehouse settled into emergency power mode. Security teams began their revised patrol patterns, professional but subtly off-balance from the power disruption. Emely remained motionless in her shadow, watching, waiting. The guards outside Lily's room shifted positions, compensating for reduced lighting conditions. They thought their biggest concern was maintaining security during a power disruption. They had no idea that the darkness they were adjusting to had just become their enemy. No idea that they were now sharing their secure facility with someone who had turned darkness into a weapon during years of covert operations. The kidnappers had planned for every conventional threat, but they were about to learn what Emily's targets in the field had discovered too late. There was nothing conventional about the way Shadow hunted. The first guard went down silently, a precise nerve strike rendering him unconscious before he could trigger an alarm. Emely caught his body before it hit the ground, dragging him into the shadows with practiced efficiency. Through her tactical earpiece, she could hear the security teams coordinating their patrols, still unaware that their perimeter had been breached. Section 4, clear, a voice reported. Backup systems at 90%. Emely accessed her mental map of the facility as she moved. Section 4 meant the patrol patterns would create a 30-second window near Lily's position. Her watch counted down the precious seconds as she closed the distance to the monitoring station. The security technician never saw her coming. One moment he was scanning his displays, the next he was slumping forward, consciousness fading from a perfectly executed chokehold. Emily's fingers moved swiftly over the keyboard, looping the security feeds before the system could register any anomalies. It was a technique she'd perfected during intelligence-gathering operations, creating blind spots that even trained observers would miss. "Command, we've got a fluctuation in the southeast grid," another guard reported. "Possible system glitch from the power transition." Emely allowed herself a grim smile as she melted back into the shadows. The diversion was working, drawing attention away from her true target area. Her SEAL team had often used similar tactics, creating patterns of disruption that kept hostile forces looking in the wrong direction. The two guards outside Lily's room maintained their position, professional but increasingly tense as reports of system irregularities continued to filter through their communications. Emely studied their positioning from her concealed vantage point. Ex-military definitely, their stance and awareness speaking of combat experience. But their focus was outward, watching for obvious threats. They weren't prepared for what was already inside their perimeter. A noise from the far corridor drew one guard's attention. He exchanged a quick hand signal with his partner before moving to investigate. Emely had choreographed this moment, a small device planted earlier, creating just enough sound to seem like someone trying to move stealthily. The guard's training would compel him to check it out, standard protocol demanding they investigate any potential breach. The remaining guard shifted his position, compensating for his partner's absence. His hand moved to his radio. "Team 2, possible movement in Corridor B. Roberts is investigating." Emely was already moving, timing her approach with the precision that had made her legendary in special operations. The guard's training was good, but she had spent years perfecting the art of attacking from blind spots that most operators didn't even know existed. The takedown was swift and silent, a combination of nerve strikes and joint manipulation that overwhelmed his defenses before he could react. Emely caught his radio before it could clatter to the ground, maintaining the illusion of normalcy for precious seconds longer. 2 quick keystrokes on her specialized equipment locked the electronic door controls, buying time before anyone could respond to the loss of communication. Through the reinforced door's window, Emely finally saw her daughter. Lily lay on a cot, apparently sedated, but otherwise unharmed. A surge of cold fury rose in Emily's chest at the sight, but she channeled it with the same discipline that had kept her alive through countless high-stakes operations. Emotion was a weapon only if properly controlled. The guard investigating. The diversion was returning, his footsteps echoing in the corridor. Emely positioned herself in the shadows, timing his approach. His training would make him notice his missing partner, but by then it would be too late. The moment he turned the corner, Emely struck, a precision combination of strikes that exploited the weaknesses in standard combat training. He managed a muffled grunt before unconsciousness claimed him, more noise than she would have liked, but still within acceptable parameters. Emily's ears caught the subtle shift in radio chatter. Security. Teams, noticing the lack of response from Lily's guards. They would investigate soon, but she had prepared for this. Her network had already created multiple false alarms in other sectors, spreading their response thin. Now it was a race against time. The door's security panel yielded to her specialized equipment, circuits bypassed, with the expertise of someone who had spent years defeating high-security systems. Emely moved silently to her daughter's side, checking vital signs with practiced efficiency. The sedation was mild, professional restraint suggesting they wanted her healthy for transport. Another piece of evidence pointing to a larger trafficking operation. Lily's eyes fluttered as Emely administered the counter-sedative, another tool carefully chosen for this operation. "Mom?" Her daughter's voice was confused, barely a whisper. How?" "Shh," Emely soothed, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her system. "Security teams approaching. Can you walk?" Years of training kept her movements calm and precise as she helped Lily to her feet, supporting her daughter's unsteady steps. The extraction route was already planned, but they had to move fast. Radio chatter intensified as security teams began converging on their position. Emily's network had bought her time, but now the real challenge began. Getting in had been the easy part. Getting out with a semi-conscious teenager would test every skill she'd learned in special operations. Through her tactical earpiece, she caught fragments of alarmed communications as security teams finally realized something was wrong. They were professional enough to understand the implications. Someone had penetrated their defenses, someone with training that exceeded their own. But by the time they put the pieces together, Shadow would already be leading her daughter through paths they'd never think to guard. The hunt wasn't over, but the hunters were about to discover what it meant to become the hunted. The warehouse corridor stretched ahead, emergency lights casting alternating patterns of light and shadow. Emely guided Lily forward, her movements precise despite her daughter's stumbling steps. The sedatives were wearing off, but not fast enough. They needed to move faster than Lily's current condition allowed. "Security breach in Section 7. The radio crackled with urgent communications as the kidnappers finally realized the extent of their situation. "Multiple guards down. Lock down all sectors." Emily's mind raced through contingencies. They'd discover the looped security feeds. Soon, eliminating one layer of her deception. "Mom," Lily whispered, her voice stronger but still shaky. What's happening?" The confusion in her daughter's tone cut through Emily's tactical focus. This wasn't just another extraction. This was her daughter seeing for the first time what her mother truly was. Later, Emely responded softly, guiding them into a maintenance alcove as boots thundered past. "Right now, I need you to trust me completely. Can you do that?" Lily nodded, her eyes wide, but showing the same determination Emely had seen in her own reflection during countless operations. The sound of opening doors echoed through the corridor. Systematic sweep patterns, professional search protocols. They were good, Emely acknowledged, but they were following standard operating procedures. Her entire career had been built on exploiting the gaps in standard procedures. "All teams, be advised," the radio crackled. "Intruder is highly trained. Possible military background. Approach with extreme caution." Emely allowed herself a grim smile. They were starting to understand, but still underestimating the situation. They were looking for a trained operator. They hadn't yet realized they were dealing with someone who had spent years teaching other operators how to disappear. A security team passed their position, flashlight beams sweeping methodically across the corridor. Emely held Lily close, using her body to shield her daughter from view. The guards' movements were precise, but they were looking for obvious hiding spots. Emely had chosen their position carefully, a maintenance shadow that most operators would dismiss as too exposed. "How are we going to get out?" Lily whispered once the team had passed. "They're everywhere." The fear in her voice was controlled. A reminder that despite her age, she was her mother's daughter. Emely checked her tactical watch. "In exactly 40 seconds, something's going to happen. When it does, we move. Stay close, do exactly as I say." Her network had prepared multiple distractions, timed to create maximum confusion without revealing a pattern. Right on schedule, explosions rocked the far side of the warehouse complex, carefully calculated demolition charges that her team had planted hours earlier. Not large enough to cause structural damage, but perfectly positioned to trigger emergency protocols. Multiple explosions in Sector 3. The radio erupted with chaos. Possible hostile assault team. All units respond. Security teams rushed toward the distraction, their training compelling them to react to the more obvious threat. Emely waited 3 heartbeats, then moved. They emerged from their hiding spot into carefully crafted confusion. Emergency response teams rushed past, none sparing a glance for a shadow moving against the flow of traffic. Emely guided Lily through paths she'd memorized earlier, maintenance corridors and service passages that existed in the blind spots of standard security protocols. "Ma'am!" A guard appeared suddenly around a corner, his surprise evident as he registered their presence. Emily's reaction was instant, pushing Lily behind her as she closed the distance. The guard was well trained, his hands moving smoothly toward his weapon, but Emely had crossed the space before he could complete the draw. The fight was brief and silent. Emely moved with the fluid precision that had made her legendary in special operations, turning the guard's own momentum against him. He managed one strangled gasp before a precise strike rendered him unconscious. Lily stared at her mother, shock evident in her features. "Mom, how did you—" Emely caught her daughter's arm, keeping them moving. There would be time for explanations later. Right now, survival demanded movement. More explosions rocked the complex, the second phase of her network's distraction. Plan. Security teams were now fully committed to defending against what they believed was a coordinated assault. None of them realized the real operation was moving quietly through their blind spots. "Command! We've lost contact with Sector 5. The radio chatter was growing more frantic. "Multiple systems failing. Possible cyber attack." Another element of Emily's plan unfolding, her network systematically dismantling the warehouse's security infrastructure. They reached a maintenance access point, the same route Emely had used to enter. "I need you to trust me," she told Lily, indicating the narrow passage. "This isn't going to be comfortable, but it's our way out." Her daughter nodded, showing the same quiet courage that had helped Emely through countless difficult operations. The passage was tight, designed for maintenance access rather than escape routes. Emely guided Lily through with careful precision, using her own body to shield her daughter from sharp edges and obstacles. Above them, boots thundered as security teams rushed to respond to multiple crises. "Alert all units!" The radio suddenly crackled with new urgency. "Primary target is missing. Repeat, package is gone. Full lockdown initiated." Emily's lips curved. In a cold smile, they were finally realizing the truth, but far too late to matter. They emerged into the rainy Seattle night, the warehouse behind them now fully engulfed in chaos. Multiple security teams visible on the roof, their attention focused outward, looking for an assault team that didn't exist. None of them thought to look for 2 shadows moving silently through their own maintenance yard. Lily's steps were steadier now, the counter-sedative doing its work. "Mom," she whispered as they moved through the darkness. Who are you really?" Emely met her daughter's eyes, seeing in them a mix of fear, confusion, and dawning understanding. The carefully maintained facade of normal life had cracked, revealing glimpses of the warrior beneath. But before Emely could respond, new headlights swept the area, reinforcements arriving. The night wasn't over yet. The kidnappers were about to discover that finding Shadow was far easier than catching her, especially now that she had something truly worth protecting. Emely guided Lily through the maze of shipping containers, their path deliberately erratic to break any pursuit patterns. The rain had intensified, providing additional cover as security teams spread through the industrial complex. Through her tactical earpiece, she could hear their frustration mounting as they realized the scale of their failure. Multiple vehicles entering the area, her network reported through encrypted channels. Nexus Corp backup teams, they're mobilizing everything they have in Seattle. Emely had expected this. An organization like Nexus wouldn't accept failure easily, especially not when it exposed their trafficking operations. "Mom," Lily whispered as they paused in the shadow of a container, her voice stronger but still shaky. "Those men, they weren't just kidnappers, were they?" Even through the lingering effects of sedation, her daughter was putting the pieces together. "No," Emely responded, checking their surroundings with practiced efficiency. "They're part of something bigger, something I've dealt with before." The sound of approaching vehicles forced them to move again, Emely leading them through paths that appeared random but were carefully chosen to avoid security cameras and likely patrol routes. Her tactical radio crackled with increased chatter. The kidnappers coordinating with their reinforcements, establishing search patterns that would normally trap anyone trying to escape the area. But Emely had spent years teaching SEAL teams how to move through exactly these kinds of containment efforts. "All teams be advised," a new voice commanded over the radio. "Someone with more authority, probably Nexus Corp leadership arriving on scene. Target is confirmed as Emely Mitchell. Intel coming in." "Wait." There was a pause that made Emely smile grimly. "Priority alert. Target is former Navy SEAL specialized in covert operations. Codename Shadow. Extreme caution advised." They were finally discovering her true identity, but the information was flowing both ways. Emely's network was intercepting their communications, building a clearer picture of the organization they were dealing with. "Shadow, we've ID'd their command element," her earpiece whispered. "Thomas Drake, former Delta Force. He's running their Seattle operations." The name triggered memories from Emely's final years of service, an operator who had gone private, using his skills for the highest bidder. They had crossed paths before, though he'd never known who she was. Now he was about to learn exactly who he had challenged. "There!" A shout broke through the rain as a security team spotted movement. Emely pushed Lily behind a container just as flashlight beams cut through the darkness. The guards moved with tactical precision, but they were following standard search patterns. Emely had written some of those patterns herself during her years, training special operations teams. "Mom," Lily's voice was barely a whisper as boots approached their position. "I'm scared." Emely squeezed her daughter's hand, letting her professional facade crack, just enough to show the fierce love beneath. "I know," she whispered back, "but fear is normal. Courage is acting despite it. And you, Lily Mitchell, are the daughter of a Navy SEAL. Courage is in your blood." The words seemed to steady her daughter, bringing a familiar determination to her eyes. The guards were close now, their movements suggesting they thought they had their quarry cornered. Emily's mind raced through options, calculating angles and timings with the precision that had kept her alive through countless operations. They needed to move, but movement would draw attention, unless a series of explosions suddenly lit up the night sky on the far side of the complex, her network's final distraction package deploying right on schedule. The guards, instinctively, turned toward the noise, creating the gap Emely needed. "Now," she breathed, guiding Lily through the shadows. They moved like ghosts, Emily's years of training extending to cover her daughter's movements. By the time the guards turned back, their targets were gone, leaving only empty shadows and rain. "All units converge on Sector 8. The radio erupted with urgent commands. "Multiple explosions, possible terrorist attack." Emely allowed herself a cold smile as they moved away from the chaos. Her network had orchestrated the perfect symphony of distractions, keeping Nexus Corp's forces running in circles while Shadow led her daughter to safety. But Thomas Drake's voice cut through the chaos with dangerous clarity. Negative on terrorist. Attack. This is a diversion. Shadow's playing us. She's leading us exactly where she wants us. All units fall back to defensive positions. Lock down the perimeter. Emely's respect for her opponent notched upward. Drake was good, starting to understand her tactics, but understanding Shadow's methods wasn't the same as being able to counter them. She had spent years perfecting the art of turning containment efforts against themselves. Emely. A new voice crackled through her tactical radio, familiar, carrying the weight of shared combat experience. Steve Thompson here. My team's in position, 2 blocks north. We've got transportation ready. Another piece of her network revealing itself. Former teammates positioned to assist the extraction. Lily's steps were steadier now as they moved through the industrial maze, her natural athleticism asserting itself as the sedatives faded. She was adapting to the situation with a resilience that made Emely's heart swell with pride. The daughter of a Navy SEAL indeed. Target's movement patterns suggest military training, one of the search teams reported. But she's not using standard evasion routes. It's like she's not even there until after we've passed. The frustration in the guard's voice was evident. They were professional operators used to dealing with predictable threats. Shadow was anything but predictable. Through her tactical earpiece, Emely caught fragments of Drake organizing a new search pattern. He was adapting, trying to counter what he thought were her tactics, but he was still thinking like a Delta Force operator, direct, aggressive, focused on overwhelming force. He hadn't yet grasped that he was dealing with someone who had specialized in turning such tactics against themselves. The night wasn't over, but Emely could feel the momentum shifting. Every move Drake made revealed more about his organization, while Shadow remained exactly that, a ghost in the darkness, leading her daughter through paths that existed in the blind spots of conventional tactical thinking. The rain continued to fall, washing away their traces as they moved closer to extraction. Behind them, Nexus Corp's carefully constructed operation was unraveling, their professionalism cracking under the pressure of dealing with a threat they couldn't see or predict. They had taken her daughter, thinking they were dealing with a simple civilian. Instead, they had awakened something far more dangerous. A mother who had spent years teaching the world's elite operators how to disappear. And now, those same skills were being used to show her daughter exactly why her mother had earned the name Shadow. All units, blockade positions, Drake's voice commanded through the tactical radio. They're moving north. I want every exit covered. No one gets through. Emely listened to the orders with professional interest as she led Lily in exactly the opposite direction, east toward a route her network had prepared hours ago. Shadow! Steve's voice whispered through her earpiece. Satellite shows heavy Nexus presence on all northern approaches. They're adapting to your patterns. Emily's lips curved in a grim smile. Drake was good, anticipating her moves, but he was still thinking in conventional terms. Still looking for standard extraction routes, the industrial complex stretched around them like a metallic maze, shipping containers and warehouses, creating canyons of steel and concrete. Rain continued to fall, reducing visibility and masking their movements. To most operators, the complex layout would be a challenge. To Emely, it was an advantage. Years of experience turning urban environments into weapons. "Mom," Lily whispered, as they paused in a shadowed alcove. "Those explosions. The guy's helping us. You planned all this." The awe in her daughter's voice was mixed with something else, understanding as pieces of her mother's past finally clicked into place. "I had help," Emely responded softly, checking their surroundings with practiced efficiency. "Remember all. Those old friends who visited over the years, the ones who called me Shadow. Lily's eyes widened as memories realigned themselves. Casual visitors now revealed as fellow operators maintaining their network. The sound of boots on metal drew their attention. Above them, tactical teams moved across the container tops, their movements precise but predictable. Emely watched their patterns through her tactical monocular, noting how Drake had positioned his forces to counter standard evasion tactics. Multiple teams converging on the north perimeter, her network reported. They're committing heavily to the blockade. Exactly as Emely had planned. Drake was reinforcing what he thought was her obvious exit route, leaving other approaches vulnerable to someone who knew how to exploit them. Target profile update. Drake's voice crackled through the radio channels. Shadow was top-tier covert ops, specialized in urban infiltration. She's not running, she's hunting. Adjust tactics accordingly. Emily's respect for her opponent continued to grow. He was starting to understand, but understanding her methods wasn't the same as being able to counter them. A security team passed below their position, flashlights sweeping methodically across the ground. Emely held Lily close, using her body to shield her daughter from view. The guards' movements were professional, but they were looking for obvious hiding spots. Shadow had spent years teaching operators how to hide in plain sight. "How are you doing this?" Lily asked once the team had passed, her voice barely a whisper. "It's like they can't see us at all." Pride swelled in Emily's chest. Her daughter wasn't just following instructions. She was starting to understand the principles behind their movements. "It's about understanding how people see," Emely explained softly as they began moving again. "They look for what they expect to find. We move where they don't expect anyone to be." The lesson was one she had taught countless SEAL teams. The art of becoming invisible, not through technology, but through understanding human perception. Their path took them through maintenance areas and service corridors that existed in the blind spots of standard security protocols. Emily's network had provided detailed layouts of the complex, but it was her years of experience that turned architectural details into tactical advantages. "All teams be advised," the radio crackled urgently. "Pattern analysis suggests, wait, we're being played. She's not moving north at all." Drake's realization came too late. Emely and Lily were already approaching their real extraction point. A service tunnel that connected to Seattle's underground maintenance network. "You've got company incoming," Steve warned through the encrypted channel. "Drake's figured it out. He's redirecting teams to your sector." Emely had expected this. No plan survived contact with an intelligent opponent, but anticipating complications was part of her training. "Shadow team in position," a new voice whispered through her earpiece, "ready to initiate Phase 2. More of her network revealing itself, former operators positioned to counter Drake's response. The night was about to become much more complicated. For Nexus Corp. A burst of gunfire erupted from the northern perimeter, followed by shouts of contact with hostile forces. Emily's network was launching their diversion, a false assault that would draw Drake's attention and resources. The sound of combat echoed across the complex, creating chaos that Shadow knew how to exploit. "All units respond," Drake's voice carried the edge of someone seeing their careful plans unravel. "Multiple hostile contacts, heavily armed. Protect the perimeter." Security teams rushed toward the sound of battle, their training compelling them to respond to the obvious threat. "Now," Emely breathed, guiding Lily toward the service tunnel entrance. They moved like ghosts through the rain, using the disruption as cover. Years of covert operations experience guided their steps, turning the complex's architecture into paths that existed between normal lines of sight. The tunnel entrance was exactly where her network had indicated a maintenance access point that didn't appear on standard security maps. Emily's specialized equipment made quick work of the locks, creating an escape route that Drake's teams wouldn't even know to guard. "Mom," Lily whispered as they prepared to enter the tunnel. Those men, will they be okay? The ones helping us? The concern in her daughter's voice made Emily's heart swell with pride. Even in this situation, Lily was thinking of others. They're fine, Emely assured her. Trust me, baby, those aren't just any soldiers up there. They're the ones who taught me some of my best tricks. The sounds of combat continued above them, her network executing a perfectly choreographed false assault that would leave no casualties, but would thoroughly disrupt Nexus Corp's operations. As they disappeared into the tunnel network, Emely caught Drake's voice one last time through her tactical radio. Stand down! It's another diversion. Find that tunnel system. They have to be using... Damn it, we've lost them. Shadow just schooled us all. Emely allowed herself a small smile as she led her daughter through the underground passage. Drake was right. They had just received an object lesson in why she had earned her call sign. But more importantly, Lily had seen firsthand that her mother was far more than just a martial arts instructor. The night wasn't over, but they were now moving through terrain that Emely had spent years mastering. Above them, Nexus Corp's operation was in chaos, their professional facade cracking under the pressure of dealing with an opponent they couldn't see or predict. They had taken her daughter, thinking they were dealing with a simple civilian. Instead, they had awakened something far more dangerous, a mother who had spent years teaching the world's elite operators how to become ghosts. And now, those same skills were being used to show her daughter exactly what it meant to be Shadow's child. The underground maintenance tunnels stretched before them like a concrete labyrinth, emergency lights casting long shadows along the walls. Emely led Lily through paths she had memorized during her preparation, each turn calculated to break any possible pursuit. Their footsteps echoed softly despite Emily's best efforts. These tunnels weren't designed for stealth. Shadow, Nexus teams have found 3 tunnel entrances, Steve's voice reported through her encrypted channel. They're deploying underground, but they're searching the main drainage system. Emely allowed herself a small smile. The drainage tunnels would have been the obvious choice, which is exactly why she had chosen this maintenance network instead. Mom. Lily's voice was stronger now, the last effects of sedation finally wearing off. All those weekend camping trips with your old friends. Those weren't really camping trips, were they? Emely glanced at her daughter, seeing the pieces of her carefully constructed cover story falling away. No, she admitted softly, as they navigated another junction. Those were training sessions. Keeping our skills sharp, maintaining our network, just in case. She didn't need to finish this sentence. The just-in-case scenario was playing out around them. Their path took them deeper into Seattle's underground infrastructure, through sections that didn't appear on public maps. Emily's network had provided detailed layouts, but it was her experience in urban warfare that turned architectural knowledge into tactical advantage. All units be advised, Drake's voice crackled through the tactical radio, frustration evident in his tone. Target is former Navy SEAL infiltration specialist. Disregard standard search patterns. I want every maintenance shaft, every utility tunnel checked. He was adapting again, but still playing catch-up to plans Emely had set in motion hours ago. They're really afraid of you, aren't they? Lily observed as they paused at an intersection, her voice carrying a mix of awe and concern. Those men, they're trained soldiers, but they're scared of Shadow. Emely checked their surroundings before responding, her movements automatic after years of operations. They're afraid because they can't fight what they can't see, and they're starting to realize exactly who they're dealing with. Multiple teams entering the tunnel network, her earpiece warned. They're establishing a search grid. Time to initiate Protocol Echo. Emely acknowledged with a soft click, another layer of her plan about to unfold. As if on cue, the tunnel system's emergency lighting began to fail, section by section. Not a malfunction, but a carefully orchestrated shutdown executed by her. Network's cyber team. Darkness spread through the underground complex like a wave. Power failure in the tunnel grid. The radio erupted with urgent reports. Backup systems not responding. Switch to night vision equipment. Emily listened to the chaos with professional interest as she pulled specialized equipment from her tactical gear. "Close your eyes for a moment, sweetheart," she instructed Lily, fitting her daughter with a pair of advanced night vision goggles, technology far beyond standard military issue. "Now open them slowly, let them adjust." Lily's soft gasp of surprise echoed in the darkness. Through the goggles, the tunnels were illuminated in perfect clarity, every detail visible in shades of green. "This is amazing," she whispered. "But won't they have night vision too?" "Standard gear," Emily confirmed, as they began moving again. "But these are special, designed to work in wavelengths their equipment can't detect. Another gift from our network." The sound of confused voices echoed through the tunnels as Nexus teams discovered their night vision equipment was being affected by interference they couldn't understand. "Something's wrong with the NVGs," a guard reported, his voice carrying traces of panic. "Getting too much interference, can't get a clear image." Emily's network had deployed specialized transmitters throughout the tunnel system, creating zones where standard night vision equipment would be practically useless. "Stay calm," Drake's voice commanded. "Switch to infrared imaging." But Emily had planned for this too. Their tactical gear was lined with material that disrupted thermal signatures, another layer of technology that existed beyond conventional military capabilities. "Shadow," Steve's voice whispered through her earpiece. "Extraction team is in position. Tunnel exit in Service Sector 5. You've got 8 minutes before they adapt to the interference patterns." They were running out of time, but Emily had expected this. No plan survived contact with an intelligent opponent indefinitely. Lily was moving more confidently now, adapting to the night vision equipment with natural grace. "The self-defense classes," she said suddenly. "You weren't just teaching me martial arts, were you? You were training me." "For moments like this," Emily confirmed softly. "I prayed they'd never come, but I had to make sure you were ready. All those years of lessons, situational awareness, controlled movement, stress management, had been carefully disguised as normal martial arts training." The sound of boots on metal echoed through the darkness, search teams trying to maintain their grid pattern despite their equipment failures. Emily guided Lily through paths that existed in the blind spots of standard search protocols, using the confusion to their advantage. "They're here somewhere," a voice carried through the tunnels, frustration evident in its tone. "Shadow can't just disappear." But that's exactly what Emily had spent years teaching others to do, become invisible, not through technology alone, but through understanding how to exist in the spaces between normal perception. 2 more minutes to extraction point, Steve updated. "Be advised, Drake is redirecting teams to your sector. He's starting to anticipate your route." Emily had expected this too. Drake was good, learning her patterns, but he was still thinking like a conventional operator. "Mom," Lily whispered as they approached their exit point, "all those stories about Dad, about how you met." Emily squeezed her daughter's hand, understanding the unspoken question. "He was our mission support specialist," she explained softly. "The best technical operator I ever worked with. He knew exactly who I was, what I did, loved me not despite it, but because of it." The memory of David brought both pain and strength. He would be proud of how their daughter was handling this night. The extraction point loomed ahead, a maintenance shaft that led to a waiting vehicle. But Emily's tactical instincts were screaming. Warnings, Drake was too good to leave such an obvious exit unguarded. The night wasn't over yet, and Shadow was about to teach Nexus Corp one final lesson in why some legends were better left undisturbed. The maintenance shaft's service ladder stretched upward into darkness, each rung a potential alarm if handled. Incorrectly. Emely studied the exit point through her specialized night vision, noting subtle signs that confirmed her instincts, scuff marks from recently positioned personnel, the faint echo of communications equipment, the almost imperceptible shift in air currents from bodies moving above. Shadow. Drake's deployed teams to all likely exit points. Steve's voice whispered through her encrypted channel. They're expecting you to surface. Emely had anticipated this. Drake was learning her methods, adapting his tactics to counter what he thought was her strategy. Multiple teams in position, her tactical radio crackled with Nexus communications. All sectors locked down. They have to come up somewhere. The confidence in their voices made Emely's lips curve in a cold smile. They still hadn't learned that expecting Shadow to follow predictable paths was their first mistake. "Mom," Lily whispered. Her enhanced vision also focused on the exit point above. "There's something wrong, isn't there? They're waiting for us." Pride swelled in Emely's chest. Her daughter wasn't just following instructions anymore. She was starting to think tactically. "Very good," Emely confirmed softly. "Which means we're not going up. Not yet." She guided Lily back from the shaft, her movements silent despite the challenging terrain. "Remember what I taught you about expectations? The most dangerous trap is the one you build yourself," Lily recited, understanding dawning in her voice. Years of subtle lessons disguised as philosophical discussions during training were suddenly revealing their true purpose. Emely led them to what appeared to be a dead end, a maintenance alcove that most operators would dismiss as tactically worthless. But Shadow had spent years teaching others to see beyond obvious assessments. Her fingers found hidden catches in the wall panels, revealing access to the building's internal infrastructure. "Service void," she explained quietly as they slipped into the narrow space. Every modern building has them, gaps between the structural and aesthetic elements. Most security teams don't even know they exist. It was a route she had identified during her preparation, but saved as a contingency. Now it would become their true exit path. "Target's gone quiet," a Nexus team reported, their frustration evident even through radio encryption. "No movement in any tunnel for 10 minutes. They were good, noticing the lack of activity, but interpreting it through conventional tactical frameworks. "Because we're looking in the wrong place," Drake's voice cut through the chatter, understanding finally dawning. "She's not using the tunnels anymore. Shadow's gone off-grid. Redirect teams to structural access points." But his realization came too late. Emely and Lily were already moving through spaces that didn't appear on any architectural plans. Their path took them upward through the building's hidden architecture, each movement carefully calculated to avoid creating detectable sounds. Emily's specialized night vision revealed a maze of utility lines and support structures, a three-dimensional labyrinth that existed between the walls of normal perception. "You can't search what you don't know exists," Emely whispered to Lily, as they navigated the void. "That's what made Shadow different from other operators. I didn't just use the shadows. I found paths between them." Her daughter nodded, absorbing the lesson even as they put it into practice. "Shadow team reporting," Steve's voice whispered through her earpiece. "Diversionary exit points are prepped, ready to initiate on your signal." More layers of her plan, about to unfold, multiple false extraction attempts that would split Nexus Corp's response. Through gaps in the building structure, Emely could see Nexus teams moving with tactical precision, searching architectural access points with professional thoroughness. But they were looking for standard infiltration routes, the kind taught in military training. Shadow had spent years developing methods that existed outside conventional doctrine. "Another energy signature," a Nexus operator called out. "North stairwell, moving fast." Emely's network was deploying thermal decoys, devices that mimicked human heat signatures, creating ghost targets that would draw response teams away from their true position. Multiple contacts, another voice reported urgently. They're everywhere. The confusion in their tone was evident as more decoys activated, creating patterns of movement that suggested a larger extraction team. Hold positions, Drake commanded, but uncertainty had crept into his voice. This is another of her tricks, shadows trying to split our response. He was right, but not in the way he thought. The decoys weren't meant to divide their forces. They were meant to make Nexus doubt their own tactical readings. "Mom," Lily whispered, as they reached a crucial junction in the void. "All those camping trips, the survival training, you were preparing me for something like this, weren't you?" The question held no accusation, only growing understanding. "I promised myself you'd never be helpless," Emily responded softly as they navigated another tight space. "That you'd have the skills to survive, even if you never knew why you learned them." The sound of boots thundered past their position as another Nexus team rushed to investigate a decoy signal. Their path continued upward through the building's hidden infrastructure, each level bringing them closer to their true extraction point. Not the obvious roof or ground floor exits, but a mid-level maintenance platform that connected to adjacent buildings through utility bridges. "Shadow!" Steve's voice carried urgent warning. "Drake's changing tactics. He's ordered teams to start breaching walls, looking for void spaces." Emily had expected this too. Drake was proving himself a worthy opponent, constantly adapting to her methods. "How much longer?" Lily asked, her voice steady despite the growing sounds of demolition as Nexus teams began searching the building's structure. "Almost there," Emily assured her, pride swelling at her daughter's composure. "Remember what I taught you about the difference between panic and urgency? Another lesson from years of disguised training, now proving its worth. Panic kills," Lily quoted softly. "Urgency saves." The sounds of breaching charges echoed through the building, but Shadow was already leading her daughter through paths that existed between the spaces Nexus Corp thought to search. They had taken her daughter, thinking they were dealing with a simple civilian. Instead, they had awakened something far more dangerous, a mother who had spent years preparing for exactly this kind of moment, teaching her daughter to survive in ways that went far beyond normal perception. And now, as Nexus Corp's operators frantically searched for conventional escape routes, Shadow was about to demonstrate why some legends survived long after leaving active service. Because they never stopped evolving, never stopped finding paths that existed between the shadows. Others thought they understood. The utility bridge stretched before them like a steel skeleton, suspended between buildings in the Seattle night. Rain continued to fall, creating curtains of water that further obscured their movement from the chaos below. Through her specialized night vision, Emily could see Nexus teams spreading through adjacent structures, still searching for conventional escape routes. Shadow Drake's figured out the utility connections, Steve's voice warned through her encrypted channel. He's deploying teams to all Skybridge access points. Emily had anticipated this too. Drake was proving himself an exceptional opponent, constantly evolving his tactics to match her methods. Multiple breaching charges detected. The tactical radio crackled with Nexus communications. "They're in the structural voids. Sweep every level." The sounds of controlled demolition echoed through the night as teams searched the spaces between walls, but always several steps behind Shadow's true position. "Mom," Lily whispered as they crouched in the shelter of a ventilation housing. "Those men, they're not going to stop, are they, even after we escape?" The tactical awareness in her daughter's question made Emily's heart swell with pride, even as it ached with the weight of necessary truth. "No, sweetheart," she confirmed softly, "which is why we're not just escaping. We're ending this." Years of preparation had created contingencies for exactly this scenario, protocols that went far beyond simple extraction. Shadow team in position, Steve updated. Phase 3 assets ready for deployment. Another layer of Emely's plan, about to unfold. Not just an escape, but a calculated dismantling of Nexus Corp's entire Seattle operation. Through gaps in the rain, Emely could see more tactical teams arriving at the complex, local law enforcement, responding to reports of explosions and gunfire. But these weren't regular police units. The tactical gear and movement patterns spoke of federal agencies, their presence carefully orchestrated by her network. All units be advised. Drake's voice carried new urgency. Federal response incoming. Sweep and clear, we need to be gone in 10 minutes. But his command came too late. Emely's network had been feeding intelligence to multiple agencies for hours, building a case that went far beyond one kidnapping. Package secured, a new voice reported through Emely's encrypted channel. Another team from her network, completing their assigned task. All evidence documented and transmitted. Federal. Teams have everything they need. Emely checked her tactical watch as they prepared to move again. The timing had to be perfect, multiple elements converging to create not just an escape, but a complete exposure of Nexus Corp's operations. Mom, Lily's voice held sudden understanding. This whole thing, you didn't just rescue me, you used their attack to trap them. The tactical awareness in her daughter's analysis made Emely smile. Even in crisis, Lily was showing the same strategic thinking that had made her father such an exceptional intelligence operator. Watch, Emely instructed softly as federal teams began establishing perimeters. Drake thinks he's containing our escape. He hasn't realized he's the one who's trapped. As if on cue, multiple federal vehicles began arriving at strategic points. Around the complex, Emely's network had spent hours feeding them intelligence, not just about the kidnapping, but about Nexus Corp's entire trafficking operation. Sir, we've got FBI tactical teams setting up blockades, a Nexus operator reported urgently. ATF and Homeland Security units approaching from multiple directions. The professional calm in their communications was cracking as they realized the scale of what was unfolding. Shadow. Steve's voice carried grim satisfaction. Federal teams have the complete package. Surveillance footage, financial records, everything linking Nexus to the trafficking network. Drake's operation is finished. Through her tactical monocular, Emely watched as Drake's carefully constructed operation began to unravel. Federal teams were moving with precision, their deployment guided by hours of intelligence from her network. Every escape route Drake had prepared was already compromised. All units, fall back to emergency extraction points, Drake commanded. But his voice had lost its confidence. Abandon all non-essential equipment. Priority is evacuation. His transmission cut off as federal teams began jamming their communications. They're running, Lily observed, her enhanced vision tracking movement patterns below. But they don't have anywhere to go, do they? The tactical understanding in her voice made Emely's chest tighten with pride. Her daughter wasn't just surviving. This night, she was comprehending it on a strategic level. No, Emely confirmed softly. Every exit they planned, every backup route, they're all compromised. My network spent hours feeding intel to federal agencies, building a case that would bring down their entire operation. Through their concealed position, they watched as federal teams systematically secured the complex. Nexus operators, for all their training, found themselves caught in a trap they hadn't seen until it was too late. Their attempted kidnapping of Lily had given Emely's network the opening they needed to expose and dismantle an entire criminal enterprise. Shadow, Steve's voice carried final confirmation. Drake is in custody. Federal teams have secured all strategic points. Nexus Corp's Seattle operation is finished. The satisfaction in his tone was evident. Years of tracking this organization had finally paid off. Emely held her daughter close as they watched federal teams complete their sweep of the complex. The night had transformed from a desperate rescue into something much more significant, the dismantling of a trafficking operation that had thought itself untouchable. "Mom." Lily's voice was soft but steady. "All those years of training, the network you maintained, you were always preparing for something like this, weren't you?" The question held new understanding, a daughter seeing her mother's true capabilities for the first time. "I prayed it would never be necessary," Emely admitted, checking their surroundings one final time before starting their movement toward true extraction. "But I made sure that if anyone ever tried to hurt you, they'd learn exactly why some legends are better left undisturbed." The Seattle rain continued to fall as Shadow led her daughter to safety, leaving behind the operation in ruins and a criminal enterprise exposed to the harsh light of federal investigation. They had taken her daughter, thinking they were dealing with a simple civilian. Instead, they had given her network the opening they needed to bring down an entire organization. And in doing so, they had taught Lily something profound: that her mother's legendary status wasn't just about combat skills or tactical expertise. It was about the ability to turn an enemy's strength into their weakness, to use their own confidence as the key to their undoing. The night had started with a kidnapping. It would end with the dismantling of a criminal empire, and a daughter understanding exactly why her mother's name still commanded respect in the shadows of the special operations world. 3 months after that rainy night in Seattle, Emely stood at her apartment window, watching the city lights flicker to life in the growing dusk. The view was the same, but everything else had changed. Her carefully maintained cover as a simple martial arts instructor had evolved into something more complex, more honest. "Mom!" Lily's voice carried from the academy below, where she was helping teach the evening's advanced class. "Steve's here with the final briefing." Emely smiled, remembering how naturally her daughter had adapted to the truth about their extended family of operators and agents. The living room had transformed as well. The hidden panels remained, but now they stood open more often, their contents no longer a secret from her daughter. The photo of her SEAL team had moved from its hidden corner to a place of honor on the wall, alongside new images. Lily training with former operators, Emely teaching specialized courses to federal agents. Steve Thompson's weathered face broke into a grin as she descended to the academy floor. "Shadow," he greeted warmly. "Just got the final report from the federal task force. Thought you'd want to hear this in person." Before we dive deeper into this story, if these kinds of tales resonate with you, make sure you're subscribed to our channel. We've got many more incredible stories coming your way, each one carefully crafted to keep you on the edge of your seat. "The Nexus Corp investigation has officially closed," Steve continued, spreading files across the training mat. "Drake's testimony opened up everything. Trafficking operations in 12 countries, corporate fronts, political connections, the whole network's been dismantled." Lily joined them, moving with the increased confidence that came from months of more focused training. The kidnapping attempt had changed her too, not breaking her spirit but tempering it, revealing strengths she hadn't known she possessed. "Your network's intel was crucial," Steve added, showing surveillance photos and documentation. Federal prosecutors said it was like someone had mapped the organization's entire structure, just waiting for the right moment to expose it. Emely examined the evidence of Nexus Corp's collapse with professional satisfaction. The organization that had thought itself untouchable had been undone not by direct confrontation, but by careful preparation and precise timing. "More than that," Steve continued, his voice carrying pride. "Your rescue operation has become a training model. Federal agencies are studying how a single operator managed to dismantle an entire criminal enterprise while extracting a hostage. Not a single operator, Emily corrected, squeezing Lily's shoulder. A network of professionals who never stopped watching out for each other, and a daughter who proved herself worthy of her heritage. The academy had changed too. While it still taught traditional martial arts, new classes had been added, specialized training for law enforcement, security consultations for corporations, advanced courses for selected students who showed particular promise. The Federal Task Force wants to formally recognize your contribution, Steve said, pulling out an official letter. They're offering a consulting position, helping train their tactical teams in advanced infiltration techniques. Emily considered the offer, remembering how it had felt to fully embrace her capabilities again that night. The carefully maintained divide between her past and present had dissolved, revealing something stronger, a way to use her skills not just for survival, but for positive change. Speaking of training, Lily interjected with a grin, when are you going to teach me that thing with the ventilation shafts? Because that was seriously cool. The casual way she referenced that night's events spoke volumes about her recovery, transforming trauma into motivation, fear into strength. Soon, Emily promised, sharing a knowing look with Steve. But first, there are some other people you need to meet. Remember how I said your father was our technical specialist? She pulled out her phone, showing a series of messages from other former teammates. He wasn't the only one who protected you from behind the scenes all these years. The evening light painted shadows across the academy floor as Emily watched her daughter absorb this latest revelation. The night of the kidnapping had changed everything, but not in the way Nexus Corp had intended. Instead of destroying their family, it had revealed its true strength and extent. Your mother, Steve told Lily with quiet pride, didn't just earn the name Shadow through combat skills. She built something unique in our community, a network that stayed vigilant, stayed connected, ready to respond when needed. What happened to Nexus Corp wasn't just about tactical expertise. It was about people watching out for their own. Emily moved to the academy window, watching the city transition from day to night. Somewhere in the darkness, other networks operated, other organizations plotted, but they would think twice now about targeting seemingly vulnerable families. The legend of Shadow had evolved, becoming something more than just a soldier's story. "Mom," Lily called softly, "the advanced class is waiting. Are you ready to start showing them what real training looks like?" The question carried layers of meaning. A daughter proud of her mother's capabilities, a student eager to learn, a family embracing its true nature. Emily turned from the window, seeing her reflection transformed from the careful facade she'd maintained for so many years. The martial arts instructor was still there, but now integrated with the warrior, the protector, the legend that had earned the name Shadow. "Yes," she answered, moving to join her daughter on the training floor. "It's time to show them what we can really do." The night that had started with an attempted kidnapping had ended with more than just a rescue. It had revealed the truth about strength, that it didn't come from operating alone in darkness, but from building connections that could turn shadows into shields. And if you want to hear more incredible stories like this one, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications. Tomorrow, we've got another powerful tale that will show you just how extraordinary ordinary people can be when pushed to their limits.